Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name's John. I'm a Senior Account Director at GCI. I've invited one of my customers here today to sort of talk to you about their journey through embracing unified communications, moving to Skype for Business, using some of the functionality that comes with that in terms of contact center functionality. So I didn't really want to bore you with me talking through a customer's experience. I thought it was better to get the customer to talk to you about their own experience. So Paul's very kindly offered or accepted the offer to tell us about his journey and what the key drivers were for their business and what sort of drove ultimately the decision to take the leap from traditional telephony to Skype for Business and the contact center functionality.
The kind of important number is we have 250 staff over, I kind of lose count, 14 locations. The reason I lose count is we do a lot of mergers and get new sites, and where we end up with is a kind of organic growth. So for our point of view is part of that thing of having that many sites is we had various phone systems of various ages. The oldest was 19 years old and could only be repaired by quite old BT engineers, because if it broke, it was second-hand parts to fix. And part of that, because it is an organic thing, the phone system was always the kind of the lonely stepchild. It's left to the end of the process. It's never the most important thing. But what came out of the last year, so this is a process that really started for us back in...
Probably this time last year.
This time last year. But before that, we knew the phone systems were failing. We knew we had this issue with how do we control our calls, how do we know what we're doing. So we needed to replace the phone system. And because we'd left it so long, we then realised that we either could go for a traditional on-site PBX or a virtual PBX system, or we could go into the cloud. Now, we'd actually, before I spoke to GCI, we'd already spec'd out an entire system, we knew what we were going to get, and about a month before we were thinking of signing the contracts, then my business had a very good idea. It's irritating that they came that far into the process, but they had a very good idea about how we communicate with our members. Presently, what we used to do was have members all calling individual offices, and while they get a good service, it was not unmonitored but uncontrolled. The quality of it depended on who you got. At a certain point you might not get anybody because somebody might be out to lunch, so the quality of the service was not bad but unquantifiable. So what we decided at that point was we needed a contact centre. We already had a concept in part of our organisation where we already did that for about 10,000 of our members, and they kind of, at that point they decided we needed to grow into a new model. And at that point, that's when we started coming to GCI, and also we threw away our original specification, started going out again. At that point, luckily for us actually, because we might have picked a system which wouldn't have been the right fit for us. And part of the reason we picked the system is, or picked this particular contact system, is it integrates so well with Skype. We've used Skype internally for video conferencing and messaging and some presence, but we didn't really use it to its full capacity. What we decided at that point was we could either do in-house, which is what me as a nerd, because I come from the system side, would have done in the past. We then decided that I couldn't be around 24 hours a day, and it was not a good thing health-wise for me to be covering the system. And also it's not a good business model going forward, so we decided to start looking at various options out there. And this is when talking to GCI about looking at a cloud-based system, or at least in this way, an off-prem system. They manage, they support, has a great deal of strength, and also it works for us because it's flexible. The flexibility is we can rapidly put another user in the middle of nowhere and then drop them right off with no planning. And the reason we need to do that is sometimes we've ended up putting phone systems in because it just takes a while to do that. But also the main driver from this point was, Skype was the icing. From my point of view, it's a great system that helps fix a lot of problems in the organisation that people didn't realise we had.
Collaboration.
But collaboration is the big one, yeah. Because actually we need to do a fair bit of it because of the way our users work. You'll have people in various offices need to collaborate, and how they did it was just via email or make a call. And it just was not coordinated. Or not coordinated, but it wasn't well supported. Also, we then, because of this new concept, I mean, the advantage of the new concept with the contact centre is we were starting from kind of base nothing. We had a very small kind of version of it with 4 people. We wanted to change that. So what we now have is a contact centre which is not live this week, but actually went live last week. It was in soft launch mode. And we couldn't have done that before. We needed some kind of system. And then the only thing I'll say is, the good thing about the contact centre system we have now is it doesn't cause me any hassle, and people don't complain about it. I work in a trade union, I'm a trade unionist. We're very good at finding problems and things and shooting them down. It's deliberate, it's fine. We're very good at it because we have to do it with our employers. The people we represent, our members, we're their employers. So what I've seen so far is we've got a whole new set of staff, we've got a whole new contact centre. It runs extended hours outside the team, but my team don't have to cover that, even though we cover some of it, but it's not self-service, but it's quite simple. And they like the system. It really, like we're early stages, but at the same time, we're looking at this almost running like a 3-year trial, and then we'll see where it goes, but we're scaling up our support for this. But we're not scaling it up because the system can't support it, we're scaling it up because we're changing how we get our members to call us. So by this time next year, we'll have most of our members will be calling through the centre and centrally controlled, and it's just a more efficient service for them. We actually can have an SLA for our membership now, which is unusual for a trade union, and it doesn't mean that some unions don't do that, but I think we're the first one to try to do that contact centre in-house. I think other larger unions have gone and done contact centres outside or collaborated with other unions. And one of our kind of key things is, it isn't about, it's not about how many calls we do in an hour. It's how many satisfied members do we have at the end of that hour. We'd rather have a longer call and then a satisfied person coming out of it because they become a referral. Most of our joiners come from word of mouth. If we do a good service, we'll get other members joining. So, but what we ended up with is, so we've ended up with a system, and it's almost so simple now because we can just bolt things on top of it, which is great for GCI, because we then go to them for another piece of the puzzle. So where we are at the moment is Skype's been running for 3 months, still getting people used to it. Some people absolutely love it. Some people would never, would kill us if we took it away, and some people just want to kill us. So they would, but the thing is, people are using the system, and we realise, actually, I joke about my staff or how well they've done this. They've actually done a really good job of accepting a system where they don't have a phone on their desk. It's a different concept, but they've done really well. I think I've learned lessons from that, but all good to them. They've done very well at switching over to the system and been quite tolerant with us while we've been doing this process. The member contact centre, I'm not saying they're working seamlessly, they're getting used to this process, but from the point of view of the system, the Enghouse piece, it is great. And actually where are we now? So we've done this piece, we're doing the PCI system, which we're approaching, we're with GCI now, have signed contracts, and now we're scoping out the work of the project. We take a lot of credit card payments in certain parts of our unions, certain parts of our membership inside the union. And again, we're within compliance with Barclaycard, who we use, but it's not a very well controlled process. It was even hard to find out how many transactions we do. We can work out a total amount, we can times that and work this out. What we're now going to have is a system, one, thankfully it'll help us with GDPR, because a lot of people are starting to talk about that now anyway, the compliance, but it'll help us make transactions a lot more seamless, and we won't have these bottlenecks where at certain parts of the year we take thousands and thousands of credit card payments. So that's where we'd be going as well. I think, like I said, operationally, it's not taking a load off my team, it just means my team can focus on things which are not firefighting. We're now moving into the stage of proactively trying to push the product out in different ways, and also starting to look at different projects or different products that we might roll out, like Office 365. Now, productivity, we're at early stages, but like I said, we've definitely, where I've got distributed teams, we've got kind of a combination of 2 different types of teams within Prospect. Teams that work closely together in one location, and teams which are spread across the entire country. And where we're seeing this so far for the productivity is the ones who are spread across the country, it's an obvious win for them. The ones who work together is kind of a harder sell, because they'll think, oh, well, it doesn't do what this phone system used to do. So those are the ones we're now starting to look at now, trying to work out what ways we can improve. You know, does presence matter to them when they can turn their shoulder, you know, look over their shoulder and see if somebody's there or not? But actually, we're trying to think of different ways of making the system not work better for them, but just how their practices work. And it's making us think about how the processes work within certain teams. So to try and improve their processes or look at kind of logic, the reasons why the system doesn't work from maybe things they could change within their team. And it isn't just to force them to use the system. You know, I mean, I work in IT, I want to prove the value of it, so I'd love to force them to. This is more about trying to get the best value out of it. And we're early stages. We've still got some users who didn't like the fact we took away their phones. So they've got a headset they'll never use, but they'll end up using their mobile all the time. So we're, I wouldn't say early stages, we're kind of middling about adoption. So like I said, I mean, it's a mindset thing. It really is actually. It's a change of, people weren't used to the fact they could see, oh, well, somebody is available or not, because we didn't use presence to that level. And funny enough, as a trade union, there were a few people nervous about knowing if they were around or not, because it's almost like a clock watching, or watching somebody come in and out. The practicality is that's never happened. Nobody's going in and saying, oh, you're not at your desk at this point. It just means that if somebody's going to try and make a call to somebody, oh, they're not available, I'll just send an email instead, or I'll send an instant message, or I'll do something else. So that's the thing we're trying to work out. See, you know, it's not like a measure of benefit. It's trying to prove back to the business that actually that's been a benefit to it. I know it has, but we're at the stage of still trying to work out what is that, how do we prove that benefit to the business. The one thing I'd say about the staff is, like I said, some staff have been very engaged, some staff I feel like this has been imposed upon them. Actually, the one thing I've learned from this is we did a lot of one-to-one staff training, because we tried to do group training for Skype and it's nuts, it just doesn't work. So we ended up doing quite a lot of one-to-one and floor walking on the day when we launched. We were always on site when we launched, and even from that, I think possibly things we learned, we should have got some key staff involved in the trial of it, because we did have some staff but not enough. We should have been picking staff from every office, and even if it's a bit counterintuitive, getting them down for meetings to talk about Skype, so they would then be able to use it and show other people. Because we found that with some offices who weren't using Skype and had a poor system, once we switched them across and shown all the benefits, they are now our champions. They are now going out and telling everybody, geez, they just could not live out the system. And actually, that's great for us. So that's one of the big things I've learned. It is, one is I underestimated our staff's capacity to use it, in most cases. And I could have taken better use of people outside my team. If I had we've got this now, we are engaging with staff, and this is making a significant difference, but if we had done that 2 months before the project instead of 1 month in, I think it would have made the launch far smoother. Not that John had to worry about any of this, I just had to call him and cry, and then we moved on. And yes, the one thing I'd say is, like any place which has we've got a senior management team, and their job is to see where the unit is going strategically, but they're not IT illiterate, but it's not their job to do this, that's my job to do. And I did get buy-in from them, but almost in some ways I could have trained them better on the system, because then they could have cascaded this down a bit more. They use the system fine, like I said, we still have occasional, not glitches in the system, but just training issues. I could have got better buy-in from them. I mean, it was obvious what they wanted. They didn't really actually care that much about Skype. What they wanted was reduced call costs, simplicity in the system, and they wanted a contact centre. And they got all of those. But actually, there's a lot of benefits to the Skype platform and how the contact center system works that they're still not familiar with. So I could have done a better job of training my senior management. So it's almost converse, you know, training slightly the general staff, but also training my senior, training up. So those are like one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this. I need to have them involved in those areas of the project, because it's not that they sign off on the project, they did sign off on the project. This is actually, they would enthusiastically then embrace it. And like I said, I've had a few of them that have done, but it's not consistent. So those
It's
are
an ongoing
kind.
journey, isn't it? I think
Yes,
fundamentally
yeah.
that's the key point.
Yeah, and with new people who come in, it's not going to be an issue because they wouldn't have thought about the old system. But one thing about trade unions is we do have, generally we have a slow turnover of staff. And that's because trade unions are generally very good places to work. People don't want to leave, they want to stay around. And because they want to stay around, you've got to put a lot of investment in the staff because they are a resource. I mean, the good thing is from the point of view of training, once you train somebody, they could be around 10 years. So actually it's a very good investment. But, you know, so where a commercial organisation may have a slightly higher turnover of staff where we don't, so these are things you've got to realise. And somehow, well not somehow, but realise that it is, some of our staff still miss that phone on their desk. I know for a fact, because we put phones on some people's desks, it doesn't improve the Skype system. As a matter of fact, it makes it worse from the point of view of the interface, and we wouldn't have done it in the contact centre anyway. So, you know, they're not lessons learned, but, you know, they're kind of obvious. But, you know, having done this now, I would not do this the same way again. But like I said, it was a good project. Actually, that's one thing I'd say. For an IT project, the only delays we had in this project were on the personnel side because it took a bit longer to train people, we had to have certain staff available, and it took slightly longer to roll out the contact centre. But actually, from my union projects, this is pretty much run to schedule. Everything was launched. Some issues were technical issues outside the control of either myself or GCI. So, you know, I mean, like I said, the contact centre will be something that transforms us.